Welcome back to the Founder-Led Marketing Show. Today we have Adam Robinson, the CEO of Retention.com, a 22 million ARR SaaS company. And Adam is currently killing it on LinkedIn. He has over 70,000 followers. And if you've seen him around, his content consistently does really well. So today we have him on to talk all about his process, how he ideates content, who he works with, why he does it, how he justifies spending so much money on this, what kind of results it's driving for him, etc., and more. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get started here, Adam. Thank you for joining. I don't think you need an introduction because I'm pretty sure 99% of the people who are in this live stream are here because of you and not because of me. CEO and founder of Retention.com, 22 million ARR SaaS. And now you guys are rolling out a new website, person identity level tool that you've been promoting on LinkedIn. And you are crushing LinkedIn, over 70,000 followers right now and consistently getting incredible engagement. That's why we have you here. First question, are the rumors true that you are spending $12,500 per month on a LinkedIn consultant?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, that is the case. I was using a ghostwriter before, and it sort of evolved. I was very scared to step back a little farther. I had not ever made a single LinkedIn post as of October of 2022. Mm-hmm. So I was terrified, wasn't on social media in my personal life. And I read Gerhardt's book, Founder Brand. Mm-hmm. And we had just honed in on our ideal customer profile with Retention.com, not this like new thing I'm doing. And I was like, everybody in the Shopify ecosystem who's qualified would use this if they just knew about it. So it was like, what is the fastest way to create awareness in the world today, the way it's set up? Like, undeniably, it's through organic social media, building up a personal profile. I was just like, I'm not going to, like, Gerhardt's just like, oh, like, put 30 minutes in your calendar and start tweeting or whatever every day. And like, I was like, I know what I'm good at, being like 10 years in an entrepreneur, like if I think back about how I made decisions 10 years ago versus now, like the me today is like LeBron James at a few things that I was just lost on 10 years ago. And I sort of felt like I'm not going to go tweet against LeBron James or Michael Jordan without knowing the game. So this guy, Tommy, who was a ghostwriter, he's like, dude, I think LinkedIn's a great place to start. It may not have like all the Shopify founders, but it's got a ton of the ecosystem on there, like agencies and vendors and stuff, which is really important to like build up kind of this like, social media fame in. And he's like, there's also this imbalance. So the other place I would have done it is Twitter. And there's this imbalance of creators on LinkedIn versus consumers. Like apparently only 1 or 2% of active LinkedIn users are creating content. So he's like, you'll crush LinkedIn. I'll write for you. And I think what really made it work is I had seen some people do this build in public thing before, and I don't have investors. And my business, there were some incredible things about it when I started, right? Like we were basically 12 million ARR and 6 people. And now we're 60 and we're 22 million ARR, but like we hadn't done this hiring yet. So simply stating that and then posting financials is enough to get enormous audience on LinkedIn, right? And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. And, kind of the journey was, I also wanted to use video because I just think I could not be more convicted in the fact that like, if you can just get people to listen to you speak intelligently about anything and watch you and hear your voice and see the mannerisms in your face and everything else, over time, they will feel like you're their friend, right? And it's like a totally different relationship than when you're not friends with somebody. It's like a level of trust that is impossible to create any other way, right? Between, it's like, I thought Drift did an incredible job with their brand in 2017, but I was just enamored by it. And I was enamored by the fact that I was enamored by it. So were all of their prospects. So were their potential investors. So were their potential acquirers. Like this brand that they created was enamoring to everybody. Right. But it was still it wasn't really Dave Cancel. It was like Drift. And I think it was some Gerhardt, some Cancel, but mostly Drift, right? I think that if it were Dave Cancel, it would have worked a lot faster with a lot less capital. So what I do believe is it gets more compelling. The world is more set up in a way to absorb these personal social profiles every year that goes by, and video in particular. It's just Russell Brunson did it at the same time Drift was building their brand in that way, but he's doing it he did it how I'm doing it. Like ClickFunnels brand looked like dog shit. I mean, kind of intentionally, but it was all about him. And the funny thing is, my co-founder of what's now retention.com at the time, like, she'd like be on his Instagram and everything and like talking about how good of a guy he is or whatever. And I'm like, Diana, like, somebody is giving him a fucking shot list. Like, somebody is creating that character for him so that everybody thinks that, and like, it was so well done that it kind of didn't feel that way. Right. Like the personal stuff I have, like, so the docuseries, I mean, there's 18 episodes, 10 minutes each. If you put a perfect text, and it's like kind of feels like Netflix a little bit, like if you put a perfect text post in that incredibly high quality and very expensive media appended to it, it will get watched for, let's say, 5,000 minutes. If I just write that same text post and then do a fake podcast video, Chris Walker style, of just shooting me at this desk like this, me talking or whatever, it will get watched for 40,000 minutes.
Interesting.
So, so it's like,
it's the hair.
The lesson there is just contextualize for the platform that you're trying to optimize for. Like, I'm still, because of this new product, like, I'm all in on LinkedIn, and we stopped making the episodic stuff just because it's not what LinkedIn wants. Like, I think it's way more compelling content, but like, like I said before, like, all I'm trying to do is get people to just like listen to me, like, riff on takes about stuff, because like, I think that there's long game to that. And it's this new way of like building brand or whatever in the most capital efficient way possible.
Right.
I'm just going to do this talking head shit. It's like way easier, way less expensive. And like,
totally.
The machine eats it up more.
Stephen Brady asked, do you use the docuseries as the pillow content for the LinkedIn posts?
So that question's more or less like, correct me if I'm wrong, like, how are you generating ideas for LinkedIn? Is that what so it's like, and back to the question of, why are you paying this guy $12,500 a month or whatever, right? So the beginning of that story was, I was using a ghostwriter, and eventually I wanted to do a video, and then I was like kind of making the videos, and the ghostwriter was rewriting them, and I thought that I was like, something's wrong about this. Like, it wasn't properly, but nobody could tell me like what was wrong, because the team was all wrong. But I was just like, I know that if I knew how to do this better, it would be working a lot better. So I was like reaching for someone who could help me do it better. And then there's like no question, I see the guys that Alec Paul works with, who's the guy I work with, and they're like putting this great thought leadership stuff on, like Sam Jacobs or whatever. Sam Jacobs was a big one because like I'm in Pavilion. And I'm like, my stuff doesn't feel like that. And I think that it should. So I started working with Alec, and at the time it was before this B2B product. We were trying to drive leads for the like largest Shopify stores or whatever. And like the engagements of the posts increased, the quality of them was undeniably much higher, but it just like wasn't generating leads of Shopify stores. And now I know, my theory is they're not really on LinkedIn, right? And had I not wanted to start this B2B product for a lot of different reasons, and then interestingly become increasingly convicted about it because of how effective my voice became when I started talking about sales and like revenue leader problems that I was having, and how I was getting basically. Another secret is like, if you're willing to like admit that you're getting your nuts kicked in, like, you will find a lot of empathy in this world, right? So interestingly, the fact that I could build so much audience around these ideas that like, I think that outbound is just getting a lot harder and changing and like all this stuff. And like my experience of like hiring people and letting them go and all that stuff, it was like, when I started talking about that stuff, there was some kind of like author to platform to audience fit and the posts, the engagement was 10x,
Right.
like overnight, just by changing who I was talking to and what I was talking about. But the interesting thing is, like, if Alec Paul were to write that exact same post from his profile, it wouldn't have worked.
Totally.
Because it like wasn't his journey and it wasn't his experience. And like, this is the interesting thing that I think about AI. It's like kind of the easy thing to think is like, oh, like, I as a CEO, or like I'm a marketer, I can like get my CEO to like start posting on LinkedIn much easier because you can have, attractive looking posts come out of this ChatGPT thing. But like, I just view this stuff as art.
Mm.
And like I listened to a podcast with Rick Rubin on it, this guy who wrote this great book called The
Yep.
Creative Act. And he's like, and I think this is dead on. He's like, the thing that I think the AI is missing he's like, the thing I think is most interesting about art is the perspective of the artist. And he's like, I'm not sure that AI has perspective. So maybe there's a way that like you can sort of be interviewing your CEO and like sort of get these types of stories and have GPT generate it. But like, I just think like it's not the best use of the tool, because as more of that crap gets pushed out, the most authentic voices get amplified even more, So like,
Right.
I'm not using it at all. Like, I have not used it in any way in any of the posts I create. The crazy thing about that $12,500 a month is it's not even fucking ghostwriter. Like, I have to write this stuff, and like some weeks it's horrible. Like, it's just terrible to have to like sit there and write, like,
How
so
long
much
does
else
one of
going
these posts
on.
take you?
So like, on a really bad day, one of them will take me like 1 hour. And then once I've fought my way through that, like I try to do 3 or 4 a week. The next two will take me like a half hour each.
Okay.
When it's feeling really good, it's like 30 or 40 minutes. And when I've written it, I'm like, this is going to fucking crush. You know what I mean? But it's like, that's like the flow state. Like, I have a
Mm-hmm.
friend who writes novels, and like he can get himself into that state every single day. Like, I just don't write enough. But yeah, it's like a really interesting thing that's happened. Part of the reason I wanted to work with Alec is because I wanted to really understand this machine, and I felt like I didn't at all,
Right.
And I feel like, so what, this is kind of a ramble, but I also think it's kind of an interesting part of the journey. So we were like, I think we're going to build this B2B product in August of last year. And then I'm like, Alec, like, I'm going to just start writing about sales and marketing and like all this shit in my journey with respect to that, and stop the econ stuff because it's not really booking us demos anyway. And then I had one post about like, there's this classic headline of like, I spoke to, 13 BDR managers over the past 9 days. And like, these are the 7 most
It's
surprising.
becoming the meta on LinkedIn now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and it just crushed, because like the essence of it was, either you're thinking about letting go of your BDR team, or you already did, and at the time, nobody was kind of talking about that, but it was like what I was talking about with all, people to hit me up and be like, dude, you let go of all your BDR, because my VP sales quit, and I was like being very public about how we downsized our sales team, and it like didn't really slow us down. So a lot of people reached out, and they were all saying the same thing. And like people in venture they were trying to analyze like how these BDRs were actually doing. It was hard. So that post crushed. Then the next week, I wrote 3 more posts, and I was like, okay, I think these are going to absolutely dominate. If I am correct about that, then I know how this machine works. If I
Mm-hmm.
am not, then I don't. And like they're all like, the top 3 or 5 posts that I had last year, like over 500,000 impressions, just 3,000
Wow.
likes, dominant. And from that moment on, it's like, okay, I get this,
Okay,
you
so
know?
this is gonna be in a nutshell. How does the machine work?
This is what Alec would say, and I agree with it. It's like the most important thing. It's not that different than writing an article for a blog or like a news publication. You just have to know what LinkedIn wants when you're doing this. Element number 1 is the headline is the most important thing by far, right? Like something that, and on LinkedIn, another thing you have to keep in mind is that you are coming across as a new person every post. Maybe not to your core audience, but you're getting served up to brand new people every single day. So, and it's a professional platform. So having a credibility building statement within that very provocative headline.
And with headline, you mean
is
the hook of the copy, not the headline on the video, right?
Yeah, exactly. The hook of the copy. Maybe I'm using the wrong terms, but the hook of the copy is by far the most important thing, way more important than whatever's in the video. Because the video gets watched because of the hook and the copy, and then the post gets read because of the hook and the copy. So there are some proven templated headlines. If you go back through my posts, if you go through Chris Walker's stuff, I take his headlines sometimes. I mean, blank explained in under 60 seconds, killer headline. Like, I spoke to X, high-level people about Y, in like Z was what, the sort of surprising and controversial things, right? Like the ones that do great for me are like, I bootstrapped 2 startups from 0 to 1 million in the last 10 years, and I'm about to do a third. Here's the 5 pieces of advice that I give. Lots of numbers in that headline, very specific numbers people love, but like, and what I would also say is anytime you're like definitive about something that everyone is wrong about, like that can do really well. So like the golden age of, or like you might say something like the golden age of SaaS is over. It's like, well, what does this guy mean by that? Like, I have to know, or like, 99% of startup founders think X, they're wrong. Right. Like he makes me not use that one because I want to use it so much, but it's like, so anyway, a lot of like, I do an idea generation session with Alec every week, and Santosh is on there. So like, by the way, another reason why I'm paying this guy 12.5 thousand per month is because he's working with 4 other people on my team.
Yep. And
so it's like when he was working with just me, kind of expensive. Right. Now that he's working with 4 people and everybody's putting out content every week, then that cost over 4
spreads out.
Is not as bad. It's still fucking expensive, and especially because like these guys are managing my inbox. Like it's a motion. So the playbook they run for other B2B SaaS founders is the best content, which leads to inbound connection. So in the very beginning, before you have an audience, they're running outbound connection campaigns to ICP. Yep. So then the best content gets served to these people. They let it go for 60 days, and then they have like a semi-automated outbound message that's just like very unassuming, and it's like an 80% response rate. So once you have an audience, then it's the best content, inbound connection requests, sort through ICP, do the same thing. So that's kind of like where it starts. And then we're always trying to like do 15 other things. Like we have this PLG motion now, and they're doing semi-automated connection requests to our website visitors using our website visitor identification tool. And some VP of marketing from Visa yesterday was like, got me, like it worked. Like I can't do it because it's like, we're never going to get through compliance, but like, whatever. So there's all sorts of power to this weapon once you get it going. And what's also interesting is, everything's so manual in my experience with startups until you really understand this like self-serve motion. So like these guys have booked over 300 calls about this with very senior people through my profile that I haven't been on. So they either put Santosh, which I understand because Santosh has so much credibility, this guy I work with who built Apollo and ZoomInfo, but like they're also throwing Pete on there, who's like a director level, and people are fine talking to him too. So it's interesting that this one profile, people feel like they have a relationship with me and they don't mind actually speaking to other people.
Right.
That's like a very high leverage thing,
I think I want to dive into what happens on the ideation session. But before that, I think if I would have to put it in a nutshell, and I think that's why you do so well, I think why Chris Walker do so well, social media, when it hits maturation and more people create content, and also now we have all this chat GPT, it moves from fake it till you make it to walk it before you talk it. So in the beginning, when there's so little content, you can just make a random post with a cool headline about anything and it gets traction. Now that there's so much, people pay attention to one, credibility, right? And you're the founder of a $22 million SaaS company. So that alone, they want to pay attention. right? And then two, when you put something like, hey, I've talked to 50 CROs of 1+ million ARR SaaS companies, and here are the 4 top things that they're seeing in the market, you're signifying that you actually put in real work that you're now reporting on. You're not sharing a random thought that you had in the shower. It's like, I put all of this work into it, and now I just distill this information to you. What happens on the ideation sessions when you...
So we're actually going to try to like record a few of them just so people can watch, because it's sort of interesting. But it's kind of just like what we post last week, how to do, another thing that is very interesting about this is like, before I was working with Alec, I was under the impression that I needed to fill out this like Justin Welsh type spreadsheet about my pillars and the content and like all that stuff.
Right.
And Alec was like, no, we're going to figure that out like just by posting. So since Labor Day, it has become so precise in like I know what to write if I want to get engagement from startup founders. I know what to write if I want to get engagement from salespeople. And I know what to write if I want to get engagement from like VP and C-level marketers.
Yep.
Right. Like if I talk about 6 Sense and demand base, like an ABM and how it's broken or whatever, like it's really high level marketers that are doing that. So it's less reach than the other two groups, because like the other two groups are kind of like larger in numbers but it's like the quality of that engagement is like unbelievable in terms of who the audience is. So there's some component of like, what did we write last week and how did it do? And like what we've done better. There's a component of which of these audiences, every once in a while I'll go 2 or 3 weeks without like hitting the startup founder audience with something. And it's like, well, we need to like write something to these founders again to like whatever. And then, it's kind of like what's happening in and around us that would make a post. Like I talk to him a few times a week, and like for instance, here's a good example that I haven't had a conversation with him yet about, but I think it would be a good post. So this guy Varun is like head of ops at Clay. This like really great. I posted about this like Clay table that we made yesterday, and it's like so fucking rad because like it does all this filtering and automated stuff that makes our product a lot more valuable. And I've never done a freemium PLG offer before, so I just wanted to know from somebody who's been fighting that battle for a few years, like, look at my pricing page. Am I like totally wrong for thinking that it should be free and then jump all the way to $495? Because I got people telling me all the time, like, oh, you need like a lower price plan or whatever. And it was a super short conversation, but like super impactful. And like this guy, like, isn't necessarily like, it's not like he's like the founder of Clay. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm talking about, you know what I mean? But he was basically like, I told him everything I was trying to do. And like, I have these aspirations of creating this like UGC machine and doing all this influencer marketing. And he's like, 2 things. One, I think you're right for starting where you're starting, because then you can just focus on this like incredibly thin slice of customers, basically, get them to agree to pay when you have a certain feature set, and then go back to them and see if they will, and then go back to them a month later and see if they're happy. And he's basically like, until you understand that, how to get this top tier customers to pay you and how to keep them happy, it is not worth doing anything else. And then once that happens, it kind of everything else works 100 times better. So like,
that's
basically it's like, we were going to do this event in May. It's like, don't fucking do that. Like, don't worry about lining up this influencer stuff. Like, don't, he's like, I'm like talking about this community ambition that I had. And he's like, I don't like that so much. He's like, our community is quote unquote vibrant because we force people to get service in Slack. We could do that elsewhere. But he's like, if you're telling me you're going to do something, and he's like, how do you think people are going to, because I was going to just like put content I'm making in this circle.so space. He's like, well, how do you think people are going to treat it? I'm like, I think he'll probably go in there and binge a little bit and be done. And he's like, so that sounds kind of mediocre. Like, why would you not just keep building community in LinkedIn? Because you're crushing it there. And like, the product's so interesting. Like, so it was this highly impactful conversation that happened that I think would be a great LinkedIn post. Cause like
Right.
2 weeks ago, I posted about how I was going to do these 5 things to get this thing off the ground. And it's like, nope, I'm going to do 2, only 2. Why? Because the highest leverage is coming from those 2 things. And like, we have a tiny team, right? So,
So
um,
one question and one thought. The question is, so on the ideation, do you just say, oh yeah, I should talk about that conversation? Do you ideate the actual hook that you're going to use and then you write the rest
yeah,
of the post later?
exactly. So I'm like taking notes about, it's basically like we, I find myself often feeling like we didn't talk through enough of the meat of the post, but we talk through the gist of the hook. So there's the hook, and then I think you want to write, it's like any other type of entertainment. You want to write as though, you want people to keep reading, and then there's kind of an SEO game. So it's like longer to an extent is better because it keeps people on there. I use a lot of templates. People love a list on LinkedIn, and
Yep.
then like, here's the takeaways with something coy to wrap it up so that they'll engage like with like some emotion or whatever. So yeah, it's like kind of jumping back and forth through topics. Santosh is on there too. And we will have walked away with that from that hour with like 3 to 4 that I write, the main ideas and the type of headline it is. And then I will fight through writing the posts at some point during the week. And then Alec goes back, makes the headline, the hook as good as it can possibly be,
Mm-hmm.
edits the post to where it's perfect. And then we've added this video element. So like I have a video, I hired this girl who made the doggy series. So we have a video team. So she'll book time in my calendar, the next week or whatever. And we'll sort of just like talk through what's in the posts that we're doing the talking heads for. So like it looks like I'm on a podcast. I'm not. It's just fake. It's like me talking to her
Right.
about the post.
Makes sense. I'm
Yeah.
just collecting kind of here some bullet points on like what it actually takes to crush on LinkedIn. So one, have credibility, be the CEO of a big company. People just want to listen to people who are successful. So figure out what that is for you, right? Maybe you've scaled
Yeah.
some product to some point. Maybe you've, were the first marketer at some company and you've grown the team to 10 people. Figure out what credibility you have. Second one, have relevant experience, right? I think that's why when you initially were talking to Shopify owners, it didn't really hit because you're not a Shopify owner. You never scaled an e-com business. But now that you're talking to SaaS founders and revenue leaders, you're a founder, you're doing SaaS, you're a revenue leader in the sense that you're out there selling and doing stuff. So like you have relevant experience. And then the third thing is, I don't know if this is a Gary Vee or an Alex Hormozy quote, but it's basically like, do interesting shit, then talk about it. So like
Yes.
the reason why you have interesting topics to talk about is because every day you're in the trenches, you're having calls, you're speaking to people, you're learning, you're figuring things out, and then you can report on it. But if you're just sitting on your desk 8 hours a day and you're kind of doing the same thing every day, then it's like, yeah, what are you going to talk about? Something that you heard from someone else or that you picked up in the news, but it's not your thing.
And I would add, if you are willing to say things that no one else is willing to say,
Mm,
it will do better
right. Have
for
some
sure. I mean,
spiciness helps.
yeah, some people cannot, but like, I mean, this work in public thing, the more you can sort of show your revenue, show your P&L or whatever, people just go nuts for that. Like it doesn't even have to be impressive or big numbers. It's just like,
Can you talk me through that
everyone
conversation?
wants to know how much money you're making. Like it's just a thing.
Yeah. Can you talk me through the conversation in your head of, because I think you posted yesterday that last month was the first down month in a while where you actually where revenue dropped. Like, what's the conversation in your head? Because most people say, oh, I shouldn't talk about this because then people will think, oh, they're kind of struggling or they're not successful. Should I really work with them? Right. It's a bad
Yeah.
brand image. How do you justify it to yourself to be vulnerable?
So like, A, I know I'm not alone right now.
Hmm.
It's like, you know what I mean? So like that makes it a bit easier. It's just hard. And B, I just know from my year and a half of experience that like that is the content that does the best when you actually show vulnerability. And there were a few posts last year where it's like, dude, my VP sales just quit. Like I had to fucking fire 15 people. It's the way. Like, I mean, that, you know, founders have been there. Like
Right.
totally sucks. But not many people write about it. So like the first part of the answer is like, that is the content that will do the best. Like when you show maximum vulnerability, and I just know from the comments and I know from the reach and everything, and kind of it makes your wins do better also because the audience is kind of there for both or whatever. And then the second part of the question was like, are you concerned? There's three things people ask about this. One is like, how do you show your losses like that? And I think I sort of answer like that. The second one is like, well, won't that adversely impact your brand in the eyes of prospects? And in the event that it does, which I think it can, it kind of, I had a salesperson reach out to me. He's like, yeah, we had a prospect say like, if people are turning off your product, then like, why would we use it or whatever? I mean, the reach that we get and the trust that I think this is building is so far beyond that one conversation.
Right.
Nothing is universally positive. Like you can run a banner ad and piss somebody off, So, yeah, I mean, I have always felt, and then the third thing is like, don't you feel like your competitors are going to just like copy everything you're doing? Look, we have a lot more competitors right now than we did a year and a half ago. Maybe, probably some of the reason is that I'm sitting here yelling about how hard we were crushing it or whatever. But I just think, yeah, that probably motivates people a little more. But also we got to where we got to so much faster because of it. And, I don't know. I tend to think that the reach and the trust that is built from the reach
Compensates for it.
Supersedes this. Like we were going to have competitors regardless. Like the reason we have competitors now, it might have like made them more motivated to know that we were doing so well, but like they were going to figure out what they figured out regardless.
Right. And I mean, it's also like, right, if Salesforce is super successful by building a CRM and now a bunch of other people build a CRM, it's like, it's almost just adding more credibility to Salesforce because like, yeah, I think you shared this one email where a competitor sent an email and said, hey, we're like your company, just, I don't know, cheaper or whatever. Do you want to try us? And it's like, yeah, the people who want to compete on price, they're going to go with that competitor. But the people who want to go with the leader in the market, it's just amplifying your position.
It's interesting that you bring that up. I tend to think that software, unless you get network effects, which are very hard and it's only a certain type of business, we're dealing with like more or less a commoditized world, and you're going to have lots of competitors no matter what you do. So in thinking about this product RB2B that I'm rolling out right now, it's like, well, what can we do that is actually a moat? I think this LinkedIn stuff, the reason I'm going so hard into it, it is like, it's so unique that between me and Santosh, we can say what we say and it like resonates so deeply with the prospects that we're going after. Very unique thing. And it's incredibly difficult to recreate. Like a lot of things have to be in line. You got to have a lot of resources and the right team to do it. The other thing when it comes to price, like the reason that I wanted to do this big freemium offer, which is like unlimited push to Slack forever. So long as you're comfortable operating out of Slack and Teams, you can use this fucking thing free forever, which is obscene. It's impossible for a new entrant to match that offer because somebody who's new has to they have to spend $1 million a year to buy this data asset, which nobody's going to fund that, right? Like, or they have to pay for each record on a unit cost. And the other thing is that like, since I have such a LinkedIn megaphone, the free offer helps me way more than if I didn't, because it's really, it's challenging to sort of do paid, performance marketing initially when you don't know what your metrics are in a free offer, right? But I have this unbelievable ability to get, 500,000 or 1 million impressions between the 4 people who are doing this every week or whatever the fuck it is. And, yeah, it's just, it all kind of like works together. And I love the free offer because it eliminates this thing where somebody comes in and they're like, well, I'll give it to you. What are they going to do? Be more free? So yeah, that was just a thought about that. Like,
makes sense. Harshit is asking, how often do these ideation sessions happen, and how much time do you spend on average per week to create the posts?
Once per week for 1 hour is the ideation sessions. Then we have another half-hour session talking about the sort of inbound, outbound messaging flow that's going on in LinkedIn. That is the result of what's coming back from these posts. That all happens on Monday. I spend at some point later in the week, I usually spend 1 to 2 hours writing posts, and then Alec edits them. I don't know how long it takes him. And then if I do, we do video now, there's another half-hour video recording session where for like 1 to 2 of the 3 posts, we'll do a talking head sort of thing, and they edit that. So it's a lot of coordination.
An hour and a half plus 2 plus another half hour is 3.5, 4 hours roughly per week. 4 or 5
And then
hours.
I'm trying to do, so like that's that, and I'm trying to do as much of this as possible too, which I would consider complementary.
Right.
I'm trying to like do like 3 either live events or podcasts per week, which I think is very similar. I'm not doing my own podcast, but I'm trying to like get in front of other people's audiences as much as possible.
Right. Guys, we have 15 minutes left here. So any questions you have, drop them in now, because I have a million more for Adam. I can keep going for 2 more hours, but I'm curious. We talked about a couple things, Adam. If a founder CEO, let's say B2B, is considering doing what you do, maybe on a smaller scale, what do you feel like are the prerequisites? What do they need to be thinking about? What needs to be in place for this type of motion to work for them? Like, what would you tell them?
If you're considering doing it, and especially if you sell to B2B, especially revenue people, I would do it, 100% do it, and get a ghostwriter. I mean, I imagine if you're considering doing it, the reason you're not actually doing it is similar to me. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that, you know? And there's a bunch of ghostwriters who can get you started. And then, you know, it's so there's this guy, Stuart Cheney, who's got a smaller app in the Shopify ecosystem. He asked me the same question. And then I went to Alec. I'm like, should this guy start posting? And he's like, yes. It actually works. You know, like, because if I could figure this out, it's going to blow the doors off. And then they want to actually, like, there are other consultants that are not $12,500 a month. Like you can, you know, so that's, I think, the dream path. Like, you just get started. Like, I don't see very much, there's people who are good, who are like a few grand a month. Like, just get started doing that. There's some like post boosting circles that you can get into. I don't use them anymore, but they were doing that when I started, and it can build some audience pretty quickly. And there's no harm to a 3 to 6 month, just get somebody to do it for you and see if you feel the same thing in the same way that Stuart and I felt, where it's like, I'm not exactly sure what this is doing, but it's like doing something that's very important, you know?
Twice a week, or like, what's the good starting point?
A good starting point is any starting point.
Right.
But like, these ghostwriters will do whatever you want. I mean, maybe like, 2 times a week. Like, I think 1 is a little bit infrequent, but 2 or 3 times a week, I think to start is, but just get going, right? Like, this operation that I have now is like, not what it was when I started. Like, it was this guy, Tommy, who was just, maybe we would talk. I don't even remember. I don't think we had idea. It's like, maybe we shared a spreadsheet with potential ideas. Otherwise he was just writing stuff. Like,
right. So I think you called it founder-led content machines, and the Nathan Latka thing that you did, we call founder-led marketing. Is this for any stage? Do you need to wait until you're at scale and you kind of, you know, you have the go-to-market that you want to scale up?
Alec would say again, the sooner the better. You know, so like anything, right? Like, you may not to be able to create the audience that I've created in the amount of time that I have created if you are not me. As your journey continues, what you are saying becomes more interesting. There's a guy sort of doing something kind of like what we're doing, Max from Warmly. I'm friends with him, like whatever. Like, he was on the pod. Yeah, he's doing a build in public too. His build in public is kind of interesting, but he's at $1 million ARR. It's like, okay, a build in public's much more interesting at 20 million ARR, and it's much more interesting than that at 100 million ARR, right? Like, so that's kind of like the there's some part of it is just like getting in the, adopting this mindset that like, this is now my life, right? Like I am doing things in a way to where they can get communicated through story on social media. So what I do say, like Santosh has a little bit different of a writing style than I do. He would say I'm much better at kind of like creating this emotional journey throughout a post that like really gets resonance on LinkedIn, whereas like it's just much more interesting factual conclusions about like analyzing situations. So topics come up during this brainstorming session, and then we're like for instance, one came up last week. Alec was like, we should do a full breakdown about what the future state of this unicorn with 5 people looks like, right? Like literally revenue, roles, team, the whole thing. And I was like, well, that sounds like a Santosh post, like it's kind of in the essence of what his style is, right? So yeah, it's not really a formal thing, but like, every once in a while a topic comes along where it's very clearly like a me post or a him post. Otherwise we're just,
so it's more like style than like,
no, like, but he feels like he hasn't cracked it yet. And he feels like I have. And he talks about it all the time. He's just like, I don't know what it, but I think it's like his posts don't agitate emotion like mine do.
Who do you pay attention to? Like, who do you now follow that you're taking lessons from?
Man, I need more people if anybody has recommendations. But like, whenever I'm just like, really for me, it's like the headline. So for me, it's either like I'm stuck on the headline, or it's like, do I template this or do I write it as a narrative? Those are kind of the two struggles that I have with posts. And whenever I'm stuck, I mean, I have just been looking at Chris Walker's. Whenever I'm stuck on headline I'll just like scroll back through the last 3 months of his stuff. And then like, I'll see one that I'm like, gonna use that one. Nigel Thomas, I think uses templates really well. So I'll like scroll through his and see if, he's said something that I could sort of fit that in. And then, Sam Jacobs, I've just been watching. I had been admiring his content for months before I started working with Alex. So those are kind of the three.
Got it.
The three that I look at.
All right, let's see. We got one more question here. Daniel asks, do you or did you previously amplify your organic content via paid ads? And if so, how do you justify the spend? What are the paid KPIs you looked at?
I haven't done that yet. We're waiting. Yeah, we're waiting to do them until the economics of our free to paid motion are a little bit better understood.
Interesting.
So like just the summary is like, my hypothesis right now is that most of the people that pay us will be using either a Salesforce or a HubSpot integration, and we don't have them yet. So in the next 30 days, hopefully we'll start to get a much better then they're going to have a 30-day sort of full feature trial for the free version. So hopefully in 60 days, we'll have a better understanding of that group of people that tells us they use Salesforce or HubSpot on the way in, like, what are we getting out of that? And then like, of the total audience, presumably 95% of people never pay us. And like, just what does it look like a little better? And we'll do it then. I kind of want to do like a big splash later in the year, but like,
I love that you call that a big
splash. Yeah, but
like
but like interestingly, like this Clay post, right? Like we're kind of not even trying to get signups because we don't know what our business model looks like yet. And like 180 people signed up for the freemium version of this since that post hit at 2 p.m. yesterday. Like, I've just never been a part of something that this is happening. It's like, we're not even trying to get people to sign up for it yet. And it's like which is another point that Varun from Clay made when we had a conversation that I want to make a post about. It's like being aware of what your problems are at the time. Like this top of funnel thing is not a problem for us at all. So we should not focus on UGC or influencers or like, thought leadership ads or anything until we've figured out this really fundamental thing about monetization, which we know nothing about yet. And then once that's solved, then it's like, okay, how do we make it go faster? Then we have a top of funnel problem again. But like the top of funnel is working so well that it's not, that's basically the reason why we haven't run any thought leadership ads yet. There hasn't been a place that felt good enough to send people to, you know?
You got message market fit. Now you got to figure out product market fit. You got time for one more question, or you got to jump?
Me? Oh yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Diego says, great guest, great host. Adam, can you expand on inbound led outbound, and what are the most common mistakes when implementing it?
Implementing it for me has been 18 months of constantly making mistakes. You know, like I feel like everything we talked about and sort of my struggles along the way reflect all the mistakes I made. But Finn, you articulated something so well that was one of the things that I felt this whole time when I'm like, I'm not sure what's wrong about this, but it's not really working, before like I switched to Alec and then switched to talking to salespeople or whatever. It's like making sure you're on the right platform. Like it's just going to work better if your prospects really relate to who you are with what you're talking about. So like you said, one of the things I felt the whole time I was trying to make content for ecom people is like, I'm not an ecom person. Like Nick Sharma makes landing pages all day. Like, of course and he owns brands. Like he's going to have more to say to these ecom guys than me. And like, they really don't care about how I can do abandoned cart audience expansion. That's 0.01% of what they give a shit about. So like, but that's what I know everything about. So like, what do I do? So that was why I was just like, I'm just going to start talking about my business, because we all, have to fire people. We all sort of experience, competition and like, different issues related to that. But it's not like it was a mistake. I don't know how else I would have gotten there, but like it started working well enough to even call it something like inbound led outbound when all of this stuff clicked. Right. So,
right.
But there's no, like every business situation is so different. Every person is so different. I just don't think that there's like a prescription for this. Like that you just have to like go little by little and see what's working and like chase down that rabbit hole,
Yeah. I think if I would add one thing, I think the ideal case scenario is that you had the job that your buyers have. Like we worked with Alex Yampolsky from Security Scorecard before, and they sell to CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers. And before starting that company, he was a CISO, right? So he knew all the ins and outs, right? If you don't have that, right? If you sell to CFOs and you were never a CFO, then you need to figure out how to get that insight. Otherwise, maybe to talking to 10 CFOs every week and then relaying that conversation, maybe by bringing in CFOs to your show and you let them shine and you're the host, the moderator, the facilitator. But if you don't have had the experience and the job that your buyers have, and ideally with credibility at a big company, growing, driving incredible results, then it's become much, much harder, right?
Much better articulated than I did.
You got to jump now, or we got, I think, one more question in here by Steven.
Yeah, I can field it.
All right. He asks, how many signups did you get from the Nathan Latka event the other week, where he signed up for RB2B?
So I don't think at that point I tried to look, but I don't even think I had the analytics to like look at it. I could go back and see now that I know how to do it, like when that was, but I want to say like maybe like 20 people actually wrote the word founder path in there, and I didn't even tell anyone to say that. So I would imagine it was more than that, maybe double that. But I don't. The answer is I don't really know. But it was not. It was definitely not zero, because all of a sudden these people were putting founder path in as like some kind of a coupon code. The bummer about that too was I was actually sending people to a wait list at the time. It was like a day before we launched our UI. So like it was a fake door. It said, sign up. And then it took them to a Google survey or Google, whatever they're called, Google form. Anyway, if anybody's listening and you went to the Google form before and we haven't contacted you, you can actually go to the website and do a self-serve.
Nice. All right. What's next for you? Like what are you going to build on now that you're already like the king of LinkedIn?
Oh man. So like A, figuring this business out is a top priority. B, as I mentioned earlier, we're in this position where we have this great database that's like a fixed cost to us. We own it all. And we are in a position. So if I can actually pull off making a totally self-serve app that does what we're talking about today, one of the key features is going to be like filtering. There's a tremendous noise versus signal problem with web traffic. So like people need to filter down to their ICP and then just push the good ones out to whoever, put them in Salesforce or HubSpot. So what that product also is basically ZoomInfo or Apollo.io, right? Because we have all the data there, and the core functionality is just building lists of contacts. So if it's completely self-serve, I want to do like a massive freemium offer in that space, like, full featured up to 5 licenses, 100% free, 6 to 10 licenses, like $300 a month, like literally just crush even the low priced thing. And we should be able to do it if it's totally self-serve. I think everybody hates paying for this contact data. It's like, wow, it's so annoying. And even Apollo, like we have 5 salespeople, we pay them 20 grand a year. Like why? Right. So yeah, that's what I think the next play is, but it's just 6 months out or something like that. And we got to do a bunch of stuff first, and TBD.
Yeah, Stephen Brady gave you a big head nodding when you said that people don't want to pay for this.
Yeah.
Tom asked, what are you paying for your videos? He wants to know how much you're paying for your videos.
Well, now so like if you go and go to my YouTube page and watch the $1 Billion Challenge is what it's called, like watch some of those I was paying around $5 grand an episode, but they were I thought it was just very good storytelling, very high quality editing and stuff. I now have the girl who made that show as a full-time employee, and I have a video producer also who's a full-time employee, and we're doing a bunch of other stuff with video besides what I'm doing, what we're talking about. So it's just a massive initiative. Like it's annoying because you can't really measure it at all. It just like I'd read through the comments on this $1 Billion Challenge video when I post it, and people are like, this is such incredible business content. Like I just haven't seen anything like it. So I was like, well, even though it's not measurable, if I hire this girl, it's a superpower that we have as an organization. And, we're super profitable. So it's like just something that I'm like blindly investing in, right, to some extent as just part of our brand. Right. Like, so
soon you're going to be,
I don't have a great answer, like what it costs to create a talking head, because it's just salaried people doing it,
Soon you're going to be, I went to VaynerMedia in 2018, and my friend was on Team Gary V, which is this SWAT team, which was a 30 people team that only worked on Gary Vaynerchuk's personal brand. 30 full-time people. Yep. Insane. You're going to have that soon.
I don't have that now.
Not yet. Cool.
Yeah,
All right.
We'll see. I could see it. I was talking to Christy, the video girl, about it. I could see doing what Russell Brunson did at some point in the future, where like people are on these different channels all the time. And the goal of that was to just make people feel like they knew who Russell Brunson was. Make people feel like they were friends with Russell Brunson. I could see that being useful at some point, but for right now, the low-hanging fruit's on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn doesn't really want that. So,
all right, Adam, thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. I think people got lots of questions. You got to run. I mean, follow Adam Robinson on LinkedIn if you don't yet, but I'm pretty sure all do. So, thank you so much for your time, Adam.
Hey, Finn, thanks for having me. Take care, everybody. Man.